prompt engineering, it's not about perfecting the perfect prompt. It's about stacking a logical sequence of prompts that together gives a quality output.
Hey, what's up, branding experts? Welcome to On Branding Podcast. Today, my guest is Jonas Angleflod, and Jonas is the visionary CEO of Theories Group, which stands at the forefront of marketing innovation, pioneering the integration of AI technologies into content creation. Hello, Jonas. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So AI is on the rise, and we have so many different chatbots, large language models like GPT-4, Gemini, Claude, and stuff like that. So can you just talk to us about which one is best? How do you approach creating content using AI?
Yeah, so the which one is best question is like anything else in marketing. It depends what you want to use them for. But if we talk about kind of the basic creation of content, which starts with a text, it's a manuscript, it's an article, it's something. It starts with something text based. Of course, we use OpenAI a lot, ChatGPT, but we use Gemini, we use Anthropic, we use basically all the available ones, including Llama, for different things. So when it comes to figuring out contextual links, for instance, Claude could be better in relating what would be searchable, what would be good online content, for instance. Gemini is perfect for doing SEO related research. ChatGPT is perfect for doing writing. So what we're doing when we approach this is we're trying to stay away from what we call brute force AI, which is basically you coming to ChatGPT, tapping like, hey, ChatGPT, give me an article about coffee. That will render kind of an article that is par or subpar, but it's not like high quality. So what we tend to do is to break this into chains of writing. So using one model for researching what is relevant for the users, what are researching online, using one model for fact checking, using one model to kind of outline, and one model to write. So we put them in long chains, which gives really good quality and human-like, or even it even surpasses human writing in many of our cases.
Okay, so basically different AI models are good for different tasks. As you mentioned, for example, Gemini, you mentioned, is good for SEO. So you basically recommend using chain of thought, right? So following up, using different models and just working with it for the research purposes and content writing. But of course, you need to fact check and ensure it's quality. So can you just talk more about the process on how do you approach, let's say, content writing for your clients, right? How do you come up with the titles, maybe generate table of contents, and then how you do research and put all of this together?
Yeah, so we do lots of different content. We do like high quality content, which could be viewed as guides, for instance. And for those, we have a really good recipe of how you do write a good guide for a game or an experience or anything like that. But it always begins, we always start with keyword research. So, because that gives you a lot of the outline, it gives you a good framework for what are people asking about related to this topic. What is the second, the third, the fourth, the 10th question? And that gives you a good outline based on how you should write. So you mentioned train of thought. That's kind of one way of implementing it, but beginning from what are the most common questions and what would people consider being good content, because good content basically answers questions or gives you guidance or a viewpoint topic. So we always start with that. That gives you a good rough outline. Based on that, either we create an outline or we add research or decide, do we want an opinion here? For instance, if we're reviewing 4 different experiences in traveling, well, then that's an opinion. We need to add something here. We kind of need to give the AI an angle, like review this from this perspective. You're a single mom, you're a 4-person family, to give it some kind of guidance on the outline. Because otherwise, exactly as you said, if you don't give this guidance or input, you get quite generic outputs. You get words, but they have low value for the end user. So it starts with keyword research, then deciding on like, is this reviewing, is this a viewpoint, is this just editorial, what is this type of content, and then we go down the line. And basically what we're doing, we're trying to automate as much as possible of this, but what we're doing is basically basically mimicking how a news agency would work or how the content agency market works. It's basically the same steps as we've done before, but we're just like automating little bits and pieces of it. And the tricky part with this is, I think you and all the listeners can kind of agree that there's been a lot of hocus pocus, like, oh, it's magic, I do this and this, and there's no real kind of recipe for how to do things good. So our problem was to kind of break down the process. What is the generic process of writing a good news article, for instance? Like, how does a journalist work? If you ask a journalist, they would say, oh, it's a creative process, it's art, it's divine inspiration. But it's not. Very often it's like a clear logical process of like figuring out what the topic is, researching angles, viewpoints, compiling that into something, creating an outline, creating a story, then writing. So I think that's the biggest challenge, to break down things into logical processes that previously haven't really been described as a logical process.
Right, well said. So basically, just to summarize for our listeners, so basically, as you would approach writing a content yourself, and content writing can take very long time if you do it manually, right? Before the AI.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? It's kind of mundane because we need to research those keywords, then decide which keywords are we going to go after, what are the most relevant or have the highest search traffic, and then you would want to also include common questions, because ultimately our content needs to answer some questions, and then you create an outline, and then you decide what type of content is that. It could be an opinion of certain type of audiences. So if you work with AI, you need to describe this audience, right? So that it can create content from that perspective, right? And
Definitely.
so basically, it's a step-by-step process. So it's not like you have some magical one prompt that is going to spit out this great piece of content.
Yeah, definitely. I think you really hit it on the head of the nail there with there is no one magical prompt, because what we've seen happen is when you try to give steps, instructions in one prompt, the AI gets confused. So what we work with, one of our founders who's like the AI guru, he says prompt engineering, it's not about perfecting the perfect prompt. It's about stacking a logical sequence of prompts that together gives a quality output. So that would be my kind of main suggestion to everybody. I mean, everybody has seen this online on LinkedIn or social media, like, this is the magical prompt that will give you content that ranks or gives you lots of traffic on TikTok or whatever. But it's not true. It's probably a chain of 7 to 10 prompts that does different things, just as different things during a writing process or within a news agency, they would do different things to kind of come together with a really quality content piece. So that's really central to understand that it's not like one prompt. It never is one prompt.
Right. So I realized that myself while trying to do some research or write articles for my blog, that's the way to go, to actually have like a sequence of prompts. That way you can create more content that is quality content, and then you can create something that is usable actually and less generic, right? So you work with AI as with your assistant, basically.
Like an employee.
Right. And I want to circle back to what we've discussed at the beginning of our conversation. Can you just mention again, what do you think, or just give us like a brief overview, what each model is best for? So you mentioned that Gemini is probably best for SEO. You use ChatGPT for writing articles. How about other models? What do you think?
Yes, so let's start with the big ones. Gemini, perfect for SEO research. It gives you context that no one else have, because probably Gemini has a lot of data from Google.
Right.
So Claude beats GPT-4 when it comes to creative writing. So if you're going to give an opinion, if you're going to extract, if you're going to do pros and cons, those kind of things, Claude is perfect for that, because it is somewhat more sophisticated when it comes to kind of becoming a person or giving a viewpoint. GPT-4 is really, really good for bulk writing. So a mix of Claude and GPT-4 would be perfect, because that would also kind of make you blend your models. So one article or one content piece isn't created with a single output. And I want to kind of do one thing here also as well, and that is to give a suggestion to people. If you find an inspirational article that you think is like, oh, this is a great topic, I want to have this on my blog, my company blog, or for my client, you can use that for like inspiration. GPT 3.5, which is kind of a forgotten model, is super fast, super cheap for extracting viewpoints, keywords, all of the things that you have in that article. You don't need to use GPT-4 for that, because GPT-4 gets confused when you give it simple instructions, whereas 3.5 is more dumb and basically does what you tell it to do. So I would suggest everybody to kind of, if you have you're going to extract keywords from an article because you want to kind of see what they have used. If you want to kind of do SEO research, try your instructions in all of the different models and compare the output. You can judge the output pretty easily, but finding out for yourself what is good for what. And there are a number of services now that kind of lets you try out all the models with one login. Quora has released one that is called Poe.com. So you can just sign up and use Claude and Mixtral and all the other models and try them out. So I would do that. The same goes for images and videos. They are good for different things. I mean, Midjourney is, of course, way far better than the other ones when it comes to like good quality output on simple input. But if you use Stable Diffusion and you kind of train it on a subset of images, you can get that to deliver really consistent brand output. So for a company, for instance, or an agency working with companies, you could use Stable Diffusion and train it on your clients' images and then generate images in that style endlessly.
Yeah, and I think Leonardo AI, they also have capability to, like, you can train your own model on your own images, right? So for those who are listening and are curious about how about images, Midjourney was probably like the first big AI art generator and is far better than others still. But there are so many different AI models. So if you're trying to create like a story, let's say, with consistent character, probably Stable Diffusion and training your own model would be best for that. So there's so many different AI tools nowadays. It's really sometimes hard to wrap your head around that. So we need to stay on top of that and kind of know how to use different tools for different things, right? Because it's not going to be like one model is best for everything. Like with the software, right? We use Photoshop for this, for raster images, but we use Illustrator for vector images. So there are different AI tools for different purposes, right?
And the same goes for video and for voice. If you want to create like, say, news videos with voiceovers, there are a multitude of different voice AIs out there that you can train and you can use. They're trained on different language sets. We work a lot with what we call the underserved market, which is all the other big languages except for English. So, Mandarin, Tamil, Hindi, and so on.
Yeah.
When it comes to those languages, there are different models that are good to create output compared to when you want to create English output.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And I know Neil Patel talks about that a lot. If you want to scale your content creation, actually the best way is to translate your content to other languages, because the most content is in English. But how about those people who don't speak English, right? Like you mentioned, Mandarin, maybe even Spanish, French, German, and stuff like that. So you can use different AI models to create content in those different languages. So it's been great talking to you. We're going to link to your website, which is theories.com. And are you active on social media?
Yeah, definitely. So LinkedIn is my preferred way of connecting. Just search for my name. I'm the only one in the world with that name, so I'm easy to find.
Okay. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.